Hello and welcome to the April 23rd, 2025 edition of the Mr. Joe Bipolar Podcast. My name is Mr. Joe. This is my neighborhood. This is my life, but this is our podcast journey. Welcome to the Mr. Joe Bipolar Podcast. Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of the Mr. Joe Bipolar Podcast. My name is Mr. Joe, and it is awesome to have everybody here with me today. And of course, it's always wonderful to be out there with you as well. I love when we get 2 days in a row of the Mr. Joe Bipolar Podcast. I got lucky today, guys. Here at Mr. Joe's neighborhood, or at least in Mr. Joe's place of employment, it is pizza day. Probably my favorite day of the week. And when that goes on, what happens is Mr. Joe does not have to eat lunch in his car. I eat lunch in the classroom. And because of that, it gives me some extra time in which I can do some recording for my audience. And there is no better time and better way than to do it the day after I've already recorded one, because what I feel is it kind of gets me on a roll. It really does. And if you haven't noticed, it almost seems as if once Mr. Joe gets going, and I believe that we were on a pretty good streak of episodes being released, I just keep them coming, keep them rolling out, everybody. And really the only reason why, once again, that I was unable to do any podcast episodes over the last week or so was my vacation time. And now I am back, and I am ready to rock and roll, and I have an interesting topic today, one in which I came up with only because for the very first time in a long time, I was actually able to control myself in terms of reaching out to somebody in particular. As a matter of fact, I actually wrote an entire text message, and I never sent it. And I'm hoping that it's not still in my drafts, because if it is, this podcast is going to be pointless, because if it's still there and I come across it, there's a good chance Mr. Joe's going to hit send. But we'll get back to that in one moment. Let's get all this garbage out of the way. I hate it, guys, and I don't even like to use the word hate, but I dislike this. MrJoe.podbean.com, that's my website, MisterJoe.podbean.com. You can donate or support. There's a button right on my website, and if you are unable to do so, no worries, because Mr. Joe's Bipolar Podcast will always be offered for free. If you want to chit-chat, reach out, MrJoeBP@yahoo.com. That's MrJoeBP. If you are interested in microdosing, there's an amazing company out there called SoulCybin. You have to use this link, though, in order to order. It's soulcybin.org/MrJoeBP. At the end of your order, there's going to be a little space there for you to put a coupon code in, and I would suggest you put in MrJoeBP, because that will get you 15% off. Now, there is one other website I want to mention. They are formerly called PolkaDot. They now have a new website. They got a whole bunch of stuff to choose from in there, between chocolate bars and gummies and truffles and dried mushrooms and things of that nature. Very simple, guys. You visit the following: Gas Stash. It's GASSTASH.com/REF/1000/ that. All those zeros, well, they make the number 1000, if that makes it any easier for you guys. So here's the deal, guys. I am not terribly happy with some of the things that have been going on my travel team for baseball. And I am not the head coach of this particular team, but the wonderful thing is that there are 4 gentlemen that coach together. And the lead coach, what his responsibility really is he does all the annoying stuff, okay? All the annoying stuff in terms of going to the meetings and hearing about all the rules and the regulations and signing people up and registering for tournaments and collecting money and all the wonderful things that Mr. Joe wants absolutely zero part of. Zero. Now, the wonderful thing is that the 4 of us always have input, and it's not like anybody is above the rest. But Mr. Joe, for the most part, stays or steers clear of some major decisions that might take place, because I just kind of let my little guy's actions speak for himself. And that's not to say that he's ever treated unfairly, because he's not. Never. I mean, he leads off every single game. He bats first, and he deserves to, because he gets on base. So I have no problems with the way that my son is treated. And believe me, if I did, I'd speak up, because I'm a coach. What I do have a problem with, though, is the way that the game is being managed in terms of the pitching. And I don't want to get too technical here, guys, but what it comes down to is I allow one of the coaches to choose the pitchers. And what seems to be a common occurrence is he brings these pitchers in, starts the game with these pitchers, and they're not doing so well. And what they end up doing is they're walking everybody, okay? Walking literally every single person on the team. And our team, there's no hits, there's no strikeouts, everybody's just walking. And I got all my kids in the infield and outfield sitting there for 45 minutes twiddling their thumbs. And at 8 years old, nobody wants to do that. So I reached out on a text message to all the coaches, and I did say the following, something along the lines of, I'm fine with the pitching choices. However, I am no longer going to keep my mouth shut. I am not going to allow our kids, this is me paraphrasing, I'm not reading the text message right now, but I'm not going to allow our kids to sit out in a field for an hour while we walk the entire ballpark. It's not happening. So whoever is pitching, if they're not pitching well, you better pull their butt out of that game ASAP. I did get a response. And I know one coach is actually very, very much in agreement with me in terms of how I feel. And the other two, I just don't even know if they're aware of the situation and the end result of what happens to a bunch of players who are sitting out in the field doing nothing. They lose focus. And then when the ball does finally get hit after 40 minutes, they're not even paying attention because they're kids. So there's a lot that comes out of this in terms of, I just want to fix my microphone, guys. I apologize. Hold on 1 second as this thing bounces around. What a pain in the butt. Mr. Joe has really got to get something going here with the microphone, or with a studio. The car's not cutting it anymore, guys. But nevertheless, I didn't get a response by two of the coaches. And those two coaches are the ones that I don't want to say are in disagreement, but the ones that are just not as knowledgeable in terms of why we need these things to happen or not happen. And because I had no response, of course, Mr. Joe, is the paranoid freako that he is, he starts to get, I don't want to say concerned, but I don't know, a little pissed off, a little taken back that there's been no acknowledgement. And what did Mr. Joe do? Well, I started going off, all right? I started typing away like a loony. First, I wrote to my wife, and I told her, that's it, I'm walking away from this team, I'm done. It'll be better for our son, he'll be more successful, because in the end, if I stick around, I'm going to end up killing somebody. And then we'll be off the team. So it's probably best I walk away now. And of course, I've said this 1,000 times to my wife, and I never walk away. After I said that to my wife, I had constructed my wonderful text message that I was going to send, which, by the way, was probably one of the nastiest things that I could have said to anybody. And as I got to the very last sentence and the very last word, instead of hitting send, I shut my messages down and I never sent it. And that's why before I mentioned, I hope it's not in my draft still, because I truly don't want to send it. And while I sit here and say I'm somewhat proud of myself, there is no doubt in my mind that Mr. Joe, whether it be the bipolar disorder, whatever mental health condition you want to refer to, myself and many of you out there have serious, severe impulsivity issues. Okay? And upon researching a little bit with impulsivity, I came across something very interesting. And a lot of the articles that I looked into, they refer to impulsivity control disorders, better known as ICDs. And from what I could make out from all the reading that I did, well, for the most part, impulse control disorders, well, they're exactly what they sound like. They're a whole bunch of behavioral actions, kind of like Mr. Joe does. And what it does is it involves this innate inability to control those impulses and those behaviors, and behaviors such as like, being angry, outbursts, being a loony bin, basically. And, even destroying things. I got to be honest with you. There are times when Mr. Joe will get so impulsive that I'll just punch something, and then I look at my hand, I say, dear God, I hope it's not broken. But for the most part, a lot of my impulsivity issues stem from language, words, things that I either say or either things that I write. And again, we're talking about behaviors, basically. Behaviors such as speaking, behaviors such as writing. And these kind of behaviors, these kinds of behavioral conditions, I guess you could say, are things that make it very, very difficult to control my actions. And unfortunately, as we know, guys, these behaviors, which are impulsive and problematic without a shadow of a doubt, well, unfortunately, they could cause a lot of hurt to other people and even to yourself. And let's face it, guys, they could lead to issues with the law and police and being arrested. And I've been there and I've done that. And I say to myself, dear Lord, why would I do that knowing that the end result is going to make me end up in jail? Well, I mean, listen, kind of like the idiotic behavior that I engaged in. I'll never forget. I know we're going back to college, guys, and Mr. Joe doesn't do this stuff anymore. But for the most part, we spent an entire 4 years picking on one individual. And let me tell you something. I love this guy. He was such a nice guy, but he was very easy to pick on. He happened to live with us. And I will never forget that he said, we were bothering him, basically torturing this man because he had brought home a girl, and his bedroom door actually had a window in it. You couldn't see very well through it, but we were, myself and I believe it was two other of us. Was it two? Yeah, I believe it was two of us. We were like lunatics. We were treating this guy, bullying him for the most part, if you really want to get down to it. And he had said something to me through the door. And I quite honestly, I don't remember what it was. What I do know is that it pissed me off. And my impulsivity control was so just, for a lack of better terms, not there in any way, shape, or form. I don't know how I did this, by the way, guys, but somehow I was able to hop up off my 2 feet and kick in his window. And again, it was like a glass window, and everything shattered and broke, and the girl ended up going home crying. And the next thing you know, well, what did my impulsivity do? It got me arrested. Okay, he certainly got me back. Okay, that's for sure. So that angry outburst, that behavior, the angriness, the insanity, well, it got me arrested. And I got to tell you guys, not that I want to spend a large amount of time on what went down in terms of the case itself, but this man tried to drop the charges, and being where we were at college, they were not really crazy about, let's say, us and where I came from. We were kind of like the outcasts. We were known to be the gang kind of guys, the tough guys, all that stuff. And they, this particular college or judicial system, well, guess what? They didn't let this guy drop the charges. They actually ended up taking over the state, and you got to find this incredible. The one who got us arrested, the one I kicked the window in, well, he was practicing to be a lawyer. And he tried to drop the charges. They wouldn't allow it, so the case continued, and guess what? He defended us. I mean, you can't make it up. You really can't. He actually defended us, and he got us out of it. We never... But listen, I remember spending some time in jail. I was in my own jail cell, and one of my buddies next to me, he got arrested as well because he couldn't control his impulsivity. And I actually remember the two of us hiding in a closet while the police officer was knocking on our door. and then we turned ourselves in. I mean, these are the stupid things you do, guys, when you're in college and just completely out of control, dealing with a mental illness, schizophrenia, unfortunately, all of a sudden emerging. I mean, a lot of crap could go wrong. So I do remember me and my buddy talking to each other from the jail cells, and, at that point you had to laugh. You really did. But in the end, we got out of it because the gentleman who got us arrested was our lawyer. Like I said, you can't make it up, guys. But unfortunately, that kind of impulsivity or inability to control your impulse and that behavior, well, that's exactly what I'm referring to, guys. That's the kind of thing that's going to get you thrown in jail. Now, I just want to mention, before I continue, that we are actually in a different zone right now, or a different space. Mr. Joe's studio has changed, and I have the luxury of being in my own home, if you could imagine. I feel like old times, everybody. Truth be told, I was supposed to be at a soccer practice tonight, and unfortunately I was forced to leave my studio because my son, from a roller skating event last night, can't run. he can't do a thing. You got to see what this kid looks like. It's unbelievable. I knew it. I had a feeling. He was out front getting ready to go to wrestling, and as I was walking outside, I was looking at him through the door. He was talking to one of the neighbors, and I could see that he was limping, and I could see that he was actually walking on his tippy toes. It was so odd, and I said, "There's no way this kid is going to do anything tonight." And he's not like that. He'll choose sports over anything. But when we got to wrestling, we actually went inside, and as we walked down the stairwell, I could tell that he was done. But he went in, and we went out. To be honest with you, as he was looking around, they were doing bear crawls. He's like, "Dad, I can't do any of this." So that's that. My wife wasn't too happy, but what am I going to do? I can't do anything. I can't force the kid to run. If he can't run, he's only going to pull things out more. So anyway, I know exactly what I was talking about. As a matter of fact, I did not even have to go back and listen. From what I could imagine, I finished up my story about the ridiculous behavior, the impulsivity that we engaged in, or at least myself, jumping up like Bruce Lee to kick in a window. So, like I had said, those are the types of things that get you into jail. Those are the type of things that get you arrested. And I got to tell you guys, for what it's worth, we mention certain things. We mention certain disorders. And for the most part, the vast majority of them that we talk about are in the DSM-5. But every once in a blue moon, we come across things that completely make sense, and they appear to be some kind of a mental illness or mental health issue, but they are not listed in the DSM-5. Now, it just so happens that the DSM-5 actually does list impulse control disorders, but it's almost like they segregate them or isolate them, or they're in different categories. I was actually able to look up some statistics too. That's what the break did for me, leaving one studio and coming into the next. I was able to look up a few things, but just so you know, these lists or conditions, or I guess you could say subcategories of our impulse control disorders, well, quite honestly, one of them's something that I've dealt with my entire career, and that's what we call ODD. And for those of you who are not familiar with oppositional defiant disorder, let me tell you, well, I fixed my microphone, I apologize. Let me tell you, try working with a little boy with ODD, and if you make it through, I will tell you two things. One, that's your ticket to heaven, and two, you have the absolute patience of a saint, without any shadow of a doubt. When I think of Mr. Joe's career and ODD, my goodness, there is one young man that comes to mind. Oh, my Benjamin. Oh, boy. Well, let me tell you guys, Benjamin. First of all, I used to walk in that house and I dreaded every damn second of it. They actually, my old company had put me in that particular situation because the father was so impulsive and so psychotic, almost had a conduct disorder to some degree, if I'm being quite honest with you, which, by the way, spoiler, that's one of our conditions, but this young man, Benjamin, he had ODD. And just so you're aware what ODD is, because we have not even given a definition, but it's oppositional defiance. It's exactly what it says. And it's this pattern of an ongoing pattern as far as I'm concerned, because my experiences, it was ongoing. It was like almost, it never took a break. So you had this ongoing pattern of just simply not wanting to cooperate with anything and being defiant and even being hostile, being mean, being rude, being aggressive. And quite honestly, it didn't matter who the authoritative figure was. I know this. When I got into Benjamin's home, the first two words he said to me, well, actually, Mom would say, Benjamin, Mr. Joe is here, say hello. And the first two words he would say to me were, F you. That's it. Hello, Benjamin. F you. Oh, well, that wasn't really nice, Benjamin. Well, go F your mom. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so. Oppositional defiant disorder. Guys, it's very hard, very difficult to even come up with an intervention to help that particular disorder. I know this, and I don't want to get too much into this, but Benjamin, actually, they discovered something called pandas, believe it or not. And I don't want to get into pandas right now because that happens to be something along the line with, I don't want to call it a disease, but it's something that has to do with children. And it's basically, it's an autoimmune disease, and it's, if I remember correctly, it's pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder associated with streptococcal infections, if I remember correctly. I know that's a mouthful, but basically it's just living with strep. It's this rare condition, and it even has a onset of tics sometimes, or OCD in children with literally a strep infection. And it's basically caused by an autoimmune attack on healthy brain tissues following that strep infection. It's wild, guys, but what I do know is Benjamin was diagnosed with that, and he had a blood transfusion. As a matter of fact, he had several blood transfusions because that happened to be the quote-unquote fix. And I do know this. I don't know the outcomes of blood transfusions from a research perspective, but I do know Benjamin got much better, for what it's worth. So maybe that pandas thing, maybe there was something to do with that. So who knows? But what I do know is ODD, other than going in and getting a blood transfusion, I've never had a lot of success, unfortunately, with my behavioral intervention. So then you look around at this conduct disorder that I had mentioned before, and it's more or less aggression towards other people. And children will engage in this, and listen, children who have conduct disorder are going to do exactly what you might anticipate they're going to do. They're going to violate the rules. They're going to violate the rules at home. They're going to be mean to their peers, and they're just going to be aggressive towards other people. That's conduct disorder. It's as simple as that. And this is another part of what we refer to as impulse control disorders. And guys, these conditions, this ODD, oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, as simple as it might sound, these are in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders, which is the DSM-5. So these are real things, guys. We even talked about another one. I believe I have a whole episode dedicated to intermittent explosive disorder, which more or less is ongoing and frequent impulsive anger outbursts. It's really what it is. And it causes chaos in everybody's freaking life. I probably did an episode on it because I thought I had it. There you go. How do you like that? And by the way, let's see. I'm getting a voicemail now about taxes. Tax season, and they want to help me out. Never mind. Now it's Barbara. Barbara from the text. Okay, I don't know, guys. I'm telling you, it's amazing. I'm just going to say it real quick. Today at school, somebody had mentioned, I got somebody into microdosing. They are actually doing amazing. It is working wonders for them. But it's so wild that we were literally talking and saying how we could just talk about things and not even type them in our internet browsers, and somehow things are coming up, and it was wild. Like, oh my God, I don't know, some kind of ad came up literally right after her and I had talked about the microdosing. It was almost like I was being listened to. And I'm not pulling a schizophrenia here, guys, okay? And I had somebody, well, she's a little nutty too. So who knows if her thought process is, being that she's on par with Mr. Joe, who knows if she's quite normal. But nevertheless, let's move away from this topic. That's for sure. Because I don't know if anybody's watching Mr. Joe or listening in, but my good God, if you guys could sit there on the other end as my audience and say that there are things you talk about, things you research, and things you just sometimes think about, and all of a sudden they pop up in your internet or on your Facebook or on your, whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about. Anyway, a couple more we got to go over. Kleptomania. For those of you who don't know, it's a mental health condition, and you feel this overpowering, irresistible urge to what? Steal. Sounds a little bit like something I know, okay? People with this disorder, guys, also, let me tell you something. They know that stealing is not right. They know it's the wrong thing to do, and they know that they could go to jail for it. They know they're going to get arrested if they get caught, but guess what? They can't stop themselves because it's an impulsivity disorder. So they can't even stop themselves from stealing, even though they know that it's not the right thing to do. And you have one more class of a subcategory, so to speak. And I can't wait to tell you guys, because I did look this up. The reason why I know these so well is because I'm looking at the percentages of the general U.S. population. So I have them listed right here. And listen, again, these are probably terms, guys, that you've heard your whole life, okay? But I'm just kind of expressing now that they're part of an impulsivity genre, so to speak. But pyromania, it is what it is. You can't resist the urge to start a fire. And just like the stealing, people that are pyromaniacs, they know that the fires are going to hurt people. They know that they're going to cause destruction. But guess what? They can't control the impulse to start one. And people, apparently with, some of these disorders, guys, specifically pyromania, they're going to feel this intense, this tension before setting fires. And quite honestly, like so many other things, almost similar to self-injurious behaviors, you feel this tension, then you light a fire, and guess what? You feel a sense of relief. And honestly, people that suffer from pyromania, they don't even start fires for any other reason than the release part. So again, think about this. People with pyromania, they feel tension before setting fires and a release afterwards. So that's how intense the feeling is, that they seriously cannot stop themselves. And oh God, I got stories about when we were younger. And listen, it was just kids being kids. Life was so different back then, guys. I mean, all we did was ride our bikes around town. And yes, we started a few fires, and I remember the fire engines coming, but, we did it in the back of the woods. And was it right? No. Was it just Mr. Joe, like a lunatic? No. It was a whole bunch of us. There's some of the things that we did like crazy kids. I mean, my God, we found a broken down truck one time with, there must have been 400 cases of beer inside. Well, let me tell you something. That was a nice summer for everybody. Okay? So anyway, these percentages that I pulled up. Oppositional defiant disorder, it affects 3.3% of children and adolescents. Conduct disorder, 4% of children and adolescents. Intermittent explosive disorder, 2.7%. Kleptomania, 0.6%, and it appears to be that the rarest type. This is Pyromania is the rarest type. It looks like, because it shows that only 0.3% of people, or 3% of people in prison for arson, specifically met the criteria for pyromania. They had that in parentheses. So, now, listen, guys, there are symptoms of impulse control disorders. Am I going to go through them all? No, because I don't know them all. What I do know is they probably are all different, because we're talking about different things here. But they all definitely have this inability to control your own behavior, which for the most part is going to have an impact on other people. Or, like I had said before, you're going to be a jailbird. You're going to be hanging out in a jail. That's really what you're going to be doing, because most people with impulse control disorder, while they know their behavior is inappropriate, they just can't stop themselves. And guys, I'm telling you, if you think that I seriously was able to stop myself from impulsively writing certain emails and impulsively sending certain texts, and I'm telling you right now, looking back on some of the pieces of writing that I would send to people, I would say, did I write this? I mean, did I really write this? Because sometimes I didn't even remember, okay? Because it's you have this internal tension. That's what goes on with impulse control. Basically, you have this feeling of an internal tension before you act out in your little, impulsivity acts, all right? And then once you engage in this impulsive, destructive, defiant behavior, you're going to feel a release. Okay? And believe it or not, there's a word for that, catharsis. And I know we've probably never gone over catharsis, but just so you know, I don't even think I've ever said that word, but it's the process of releasing those pent-up emotions. You got these pent-up emotions inside. They're powerful. And unfortunately, when it comes to impulse control, you're going to express these pent-up emotions by engaging in these horrible, horrible actions, and see basically a way to purge negative emotions, and then gain a sense of, like a cleansing, so to speak, I guess you could say it. I mean, really, that's what it is. It's like taking those negative behaviors, because you're so bottled up inside. You got so much anger. Catharsis is going to involve all that anger and all that sadness and that grief and all that crap that you feel. And it's like it's bottled up. And then you release it. And you could release it through positive means. Some people do it through music. They sing. They write. They exercise. They draw. They color. Or they act like wackadoos. And that's, listen, Mr. Joe is being silly when I say that, because what it comes down to is this is a mental health condition, okay? But it is different from other kinds, obviously, like anxiety and mood disorder, in which with those particular disorders, a person is, for the most part, internalizing their distress. When you deal with impulse control disorders, it's behaviors that are externalizing. In other words, people with impulse control disorder, they'll express resentment and anger and hostility very, very, very outwardly to other people. And they create these constant conflicts with other people, or the police officers. Listen, this is what Mr. Joe's whole life was about. Creating conflicts with other people. Okay? That's really what it was. And yeah, listen, kids are going to become defiant at times. That's just the nature of a child. They're going to test their people. They're going to test their mom. They're going to test their dad. They're going to test their teachers. I never really tested anybody. I was scared to death of everything, I think. But they're going to test, and they're going to find what they could get away with, to learn what's appropriate and what's not. And when it comes to impulse control disorders, there is a different pattern, guys. There's an ongoing pattern of these severe behaviors. They're not just going to be defiant at times. It's these behaviors, like I've said so many times in the past, you're talking about behaviors that are going to screw up your daily life. And it's going to screw up your relationships. And that's really what it comes down to, guys. We listen, I don't know anything in terms of research. I have nothing. Nothing at all for you. Because I'm telling you right now, researchers are still learning about the causes of these control disorders. Listen, we have to assume that genetics plays a role. We got all the common things, guys. We got the environment. I mean, we've talked about them so many times. I'm sitting here trying to figure out, off the top of my head, but like genetics, okay? You got a biological parent with a mood disorder. Guess what? Well, very possible that you're going to have a conduct disorder. How do you like that? Okay? So let's just go to assume that genetic factors are at play here when it comes to impulsivity control disorders. And like I said, the environment as well. They're going to contribute to some of the things that go on, like so many other things. Like, depends what community or what neighborhood you grow up in. Okay? It depends whether you're being neglected. It depends whether you're being abused or seeing abuse. It depends if you have friends that are acting out. I know it sounds simplistic, but it does. Sometimes that's all it takes, is just to have a whole bunch of friends to kick it off. Okay? And listen, I don't know this. I'm not a scientist and I'm not a doctor. Okay? But I would have to imagine that there is some kind of study out there that is going to show some abnormal brain activity, or even some abnormal hormone activity, like the cortisol that we've spoken about so many times in the past. Okay, that really we've only spoken about cortisol when it comes to anxiety, but you want to know something? I can't even imagine that when it comes to impulse control disorders, that doesn't play a role as well. So, in order to know whether you're not going to have it or not, guys, you got to go and turn over to that DSM-5, okay? And just like anything else, there's got to be a long period of time in which you're going to exhibit these symptoms, more or less the symptoms that I just went over. I would imagine you got to be at least a year, maybe 6 months, 8 months. I mean, but at least 6 months. Okay, that's you're going to have those signs and those symptoms at least, I would think, for 6 months. So, my goodness, guys, Mr. Joe thinks about all the impulsive, horrific decisions that I've made in life. I mean, I say to myself, can they be prevented? I don't know if they can be prevented, guys. So to some degree, I think if you diagnose it early enough and you get enough treatment early on, I think that it can reduce the distress that you're experiencing. Okay, I do believe that. I do believe there's probably a good outlook for impulsive control disorders. To some extent, I would think, I would hope anyway. But then again, with that being said, what's to make one think that it wouldn't be a long-term situation in which all of a sudden now you're dealing with substance abuse and alcoholism and depression and, relationship problems, and you got no job, and, once again, this round robin of events. And think about what it all comes down to, guys. It all comes down to our mental health. It doesn't matter. Bipolar disorder. It's amazing because when we talk, I feel like somehow, some way, when we're going over signs and symptoms and ways to treat certain things, I feel like I always tend to delve right back into the same sentences, same phrases, because as different as all of these illnesses are, as different as all these mental health issues are, there are so many similarities, guys. There really are. There are so many things so many of these disorders are impacted and treated in such similar ways. I gotta I believe I told you the impulsivity, that psychotic email I wrote one time. I'm not going to get into it because it's probably in a previous episode, but I got bit one time at work, and what did I do? I went home and I lashed out. I probably should have been getting a tetanus shot. Instead, I was lashing out at the world. Okay? I was telling every single person what they did wrong. Why? Because I was angry and I was frustrated. And at the end of the day, somebody came over to me and said, you know what? That should not have been done. You had no impulsivity control. Guys, I literally can go down a list of things. I mean, the amount of impulsivity in my life, okay? I mean, whether it was, I don't know, I'm not coming. I got to go out. Okay, oh, look, my bachelor party. No, I'm not going. Abruptly, just later, bye. Okay, impulsive. We've talked about all those, what's it called? Some of the eating things, the binge eating, the drinking, things of that nature. Those are all impulsive. Those are things that I've done, the drinking, binge drinking. What else is Mr. Joe? I mean, guys, come on. Impulsivity involved. I think of Mr. Joe hurting myself, threatening other people. That's impulsivity. Walking out on a job. I've never done that, right then and there. But I've certainly said the wrong things at a job. Okay? I mean, being physically violent. That is impulsive. Think about, and I know this goes a lot with bipolar disorder to some degree, but when you're going to overspend your money, that's impulsivity. When you're going to overshare, overshare information about yourself, that's impulsivity. Believe it or not, over apologizing for something you might have done wrong or might not have done wrong is impulsivity. So, I'm trying to think. That's why Mr. Joe's wrecking property. Okay? I don't know. Clearing out your whole life in terms of, taking all your belongings out. I want to start over. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn over a new leaf constantly. Constantly turning over a new leaf. That's what I refer to as impulsive control or lack of there. I mean, I don't know. Even interrupting somebody while they're speaking. So, I don't know, guys. I tell you, it is mind-boggling to me to some degree how we are, regardless of the mental health condition, we are all so intertwined in so many ways. We really are, guys. And I know we did a episode already. I believe I did one, even Impulsivity 101. But I feel like we broke this down a little bit better. And based on some of my actions, feelings, and some of my experiences, sometimes I have to re-report on things. And I'm grateful that we were able to pull out some of those subcategories as well. Impulse behaviors are unnecessarily risky and inappropriate and made without any consideration of the consequences that are going to occur because of what you've done. Impulsivity is strengthened, powered by emotion. Really, in comparison to logic. We should be using logic when we respond to certain things. Okay? I mean, but when you're talking about impulsivity, you can even go against your own desire or your own plans in life. Okay, and it's listen, I said it before, guys, it's human nature sometimes to act in ways and say, oh God, I wish I hadn't done that, or we sometimes we do things and afterwards we don't even consider all the negative consequences of the actions that we just pulled, okay? But a regular pattern of impulsive reactions, that could be a sign of impulsivity issues. I'm grateful that I've gotten it under control to some extent, but it's still there. Without a doubt, it's still there. So listen, if I had the answers, I'd give the answers, and clearly I don't. Mr. Joe doesn't have the answers. I have no answers, really. All I have is a podcast, guys. All I have is a podcast. What I can tell you is this, okay? We're all one. We really are. We're all one. And we all engage in this from time to time, and Mr. Joe is no different. And the only thing I could do is offer you some Mr. Joe advice, in a sense, where I could say, do your best to control it. I mean, in order to do that, you have to focus on strengthening your awareness. You got to identify your triggers. You have to try to develop some healthy coping strategies. Some of the things that Mr. Joe is just really not able to do very well. But if you practice some structured routines and even delaying some of that gratification that we're so accustomed to getting, you know what? Maybe we can control our actions a little bit more, guys. So, nevertheless, if you are doing well, I ask that you continue to work as hard as you possibly can. If you love or you care about somebody with a mental health issue or a drug addiction, please continue to support that person the very best way that you know how. And if you're struggling right now, maybe struggling with some impulsive behavior, struggling with your mental health, well, you need to call your doctor. You need to take your medicine. You need to listen to the Mr. Joe Bipolar podcast. And most importantly, soldier on. Love you guys so very much. Thanks for listening to the Mr. Joe Bipolar podcast. Everybody have a great day, and I will talk to you again soon. Thanks again. Bye-bye.